No one had walked through the wasted zone for years. The land was dry, cracked, and dead. The wind blew sharp sand across broken rocks. Even animals didn't come here anymore. Only silence lived in this place, until one day, the sky screamed. Ball of fire shot down from above. It crashed into the edge of the desert with a thunder that shook the ground. Black smoke rose high into the sky. The fireball left a deep trail of burning metal and dust. For a long time no one moved. But hidden behind a sharp hill, an alien girl saw everything. She was small, with thin arms and glowing green eyes. Her name was Saya, and she had been looking for food. She crawled closer, heart beating fast. From the smoke and fire, a shape appeared. Someone was crawling out, not an alien, not a beast, but a boy, a human boy. His skin was dirty, his face pale. He looked weak, tired, and lost, but he held a strange bag close to his chest. Behind him, the crashed pod was broken in half. Sparks flew from the cracked machine. The boy coughed, then fell to his knees. Saya gasped quietly. She had never seen a real human before. The village elder said humans were dangerous, but this one looked like he could barely stand. He wasn't scary. He looked like someone who needed help. Still, Saya didn't move. She watched as he opened his bag. Inside were wires, broken glass, bent pipes, and shiny pieces of metal. It all looked like trash, yet the boy looked at it like it was treasure. He smiled, just a little, then passed out. Saya ran back to her village. She shouted about the crash, the fire, and the human boy. The villagers gathered, nervous and angry. "No human can be trusted," the elder said. "Leave him, we have no food even for our own." But Saya didn't. "Stop," she begged, pulling the elder's hand. "Please," she said. He had strange things with him. Glowing trash, maybe it can help. The word glow made them pause. The village was dying. The river had dried long ago. The soil wouldn't grow crops anymore. They had tried everything. But nothing worked. Maybe, just maybe, this strange trash could save them. So a small group followed Saya. When they reached the crash site, the boy was still lying in the dirt. His lips were cracked, breathing slow, but the bag was still there. Glowing gently in the dim sun, they lifted him and carried him back. In the village, some people shouted, "What if he's a spy? He'll eat our food. He'll bring more humans." But the elder raised his hand. "Let us see what he knows," he said. "Then we decide." The boy woke up in a small hut. He looked around, confused and scared. Aliens with glowing skin and sharp eyes stood over him. He tried to speak, but only coughed. Saya gave him water, just a little. Then she pointed to his bag. He understood, slowly. He opened it and showed them his strange items. To the aliens, it all looked useless. Bent wire, broken lenses, pieces of old tech. But the boy smiled and with shaky hands began putting things together. He didn't speak their language, but he used his hands. He built a small device, connected wires, placed a glass on top. When the sun hit it, the device made a small click. Then, after a moment, a drop of water fell into a cup. The crowd gasped. One drop, then two. It was slow, but it was real water. From nothing but sunlight and trash, the elder stepped forward. "What is this, boy?" he whispered. Saya looked at the device, then at the boy. She smiled. "Maybe he is our answer." The villagers didn't cheer, not yet, but they didn't push him away either. They watched him as he made small tools, fixed broken things, even helped repair a cooking pot. The elder stayed quiet, but his eyes never left the boy. He wondered, what else could this human build from trash? Could he truly help them survive? Or was this the beginning of something even more dangerous? No one knew yet, but one thing was clear. The wasted zone was no longer silent. It had found its first spark of hope. The human boy was awake, but the village still slept with empty stomachs. The ground cracked under their feet. The sky never gave rain, and the wind whispered only hunger. They had water now, just a few drops from his strange invention. But water was not food, and food was still gone. The elder watched the boy from behind a curtain of old cloth. He didn't trust him, not yet. But something deep in his bones told him this human was not just another mouth to feed. He was building again, even with his hands shaking from hunger. Leo, the human boy, had found a flat space outside a broken hut. He laid out his pieces of trash like a puzzle. He did not know the alien language, but his hands moved with purpose. Every screw, every wire, every spark, he treated them like gold. Saya brought him bits of metal from the village junk pile. Most of it was rusted or cracked, but he took everything with a nod and a tired smile. She watched him work and sometimes tried to guess what he was making. One day, he shaped bent metal into a circle. The next, he added tubes and glass pieces that caught the light. Villagers walked past slowly, pretending not to stare. They still remembered the time their crops turned black in the ground. They remembered the sickness that came after the river dried. They remembered the cold nights with nothing in their bellies. So when they saw the human working with trash, they laughed under their breath. "He's just playing," one said. "He's a lost child with toys," another whispered. But none of them looked away. On the 5th day, something strange happened. A group of children gathered around Leo, not to laugh but to help. They brought him a cracked solar plate and some burned-out lights. He nodded and added them to his growing machine. The machine now stood as tall as his chest. It had pipes reaching into the ground, glass windows on its side, and a small mirror on top. It looked like a strange tree made of metal. Leo sat beside it, waiting for the sun. When the light touched the mirror, the machine clicked. It began to hum gently, like a sleeping beast. Hot air flowed from the top, steam drifted from the side, and then, for the first time in years, the villagers smelled something sweet, fresh soil. The machine had cleaned a patch of dirt, removed salt and poison. The elder stepped closer and pressed his hand into the ground. It was warm, soft, and full of life. He said nothing, but his eyes were wet. Leo pointed to the dirt, then to a small pouch on his belt. He opened it and poured out seeds, strange ones, old and dry. He planted them gently in the clean soil, then stepped back. No one laughed this time. For many days, nothing grew. The sun was cruel. The air, too, dry, and the people too tired to hope. But Leo came every morning, checking the machine, cleaning the glass, adjusting the pipes. Saya brought him food scraps, barely enough to survive. He never complained, not once. Then one morning, Saya screamed. Tiny green leaves had pushed through the soil, just 2. But they stood proud like warriors. The villagers came running, staring in silence. Life was returning. Some still whispered doubts. Maybe it was magic, maybe just luck. But most stayed and watched the plants grow each day. More leaves appeared, then tiny buds, then stronger stems. The elder called Leo to the center of the village. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You came from the sky," he said slowly. "But maybe you were sent by the ground." Leo didn't understand the words, but he understood the gesture. He smiled and nodded, wiping dirt from his hands. He pointed to the stars, then to the trash pile, then to the green plants. He was saying, "I can do more." And he would, because while the villagers began to hope, far away, something dark was watching them. Not everyone liked that the dead land was waking again. Not everyone wanted the village to live, but for now, the people gathered around Leo. They didn't call him a fool anymore. They called him something else. The trash builder, the soil bringer, the strange boy who made the ground grow. And Leo, tired but smiling, looked at his next pile of junk, because he wasn't done, not yet. The wind had always been dry and dead in the village, but today it smelled different. It carried something warm, something clean, something alive. The villagers woke up sniffing the air, confused and quiet. A child touched the ground near Leo's strange machine and pulled her fingers back in shock. The soil was wet. No one spoke. They just stared at the green patch growing larger. More leaves had appeared overnight, thick and healthy. The crops were real, not weak or sick like before. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't luck. It was the machine. Leo stood beside it, holding a metal rod like a shepherd with his sheep. His clothes were torn, his face thinner than before, but his eyes were full of something powerful hope. He turned a small valve, and the machine gave. A low hum. Steam rose gently from a pipe, a sign it was working. Saya stood beside him. Proud and excited, she had believed in him from the start. Now others began to believe too, one by one. Villagers came forward and dropped things at his feet, more trash. Burnt cables, cracked screens, broken fans, even pieces of old cooking pots. They had nothing else to give, but this was how they thanked him. Leo picked up each piece and nodded. To him, these were treasures. He spread them out beside the machine, thinking, planning, dreaming. The elder stood on a hill, watching everything in silence. He had once told the village to turn away from the boy. Now he watched as the boy turned their world around, but not. Everyone smiled. From the edge of the village, in the shadow of an old broken wall, a pair of eyes watched Leo with hate. It was Carr, a bitter man who had lost his family when the crops failed. He did not trust machines, and he did not trust humans. He whispered to himself, "This will not last." That night, the village had fire again, not just for heat, but to celebrate. The children danced. The adults shared tiny bites of roasted root. It was not much, but it felt like a feast. Leo sat near the flames, Saya beside him, both holding metal cups of warm drink. The stars shone above like watchers, silent and endless. Leo looked up and smiled weakly. He missed his home, but this place felt almost like one. The people still spoke a different tongue, but their faces said everything he needed to know. Trust was growing, just like the plants. But in the dark hills beyond the village, something else had woken up. A group of ragged shadows stood by a fire of their own. They had seen the smoke rising days ago. They had seen the children dancing. They had heard the laughter echoing through the cold air. And now they wanted what the village had. Bandits, thin and cruel, eyes hollow with hunger, their leader, a tall alien with a scar over one eye, crushed a small rock in his hand. "The village has water," he growled. "They must have food too," another one replied, "and machines. Strange machines. They planned under the stars while the village slept." The next morning, Leo woke to something strange. A dead bird lay near his machine. Stiff and frozen, he frowned, picked it up and examined it. The machine was still working, still humming, still warm. But something felt wrong. Saya came running. Soon after, out of breath, "The food pile is missing," she said. The elder came limping behind her, pale and angry. Someone had stolen their tiny harvest. Leo's heart sank. He looked around and saw footprints near the edge of the village. Big, deep, fresh. They led toward the hills. Someone had been watching. Someone had taken from them. The villagers gathered around Leo's machine, nervous and scared. If their new hope was stolen, what would they do? Leo stood slowly and picked up his bag of tools. He looked at the machine, then at the hills. He didn't speak, but everyone understood. He was going to build again something better, something stronger, because now it wasn't just about helping. Now he had to protect them too, and far away, the bandits sharpened their knives. Their eyes burned with hunger and greed. They didn't understand how powerful a boy with junk could be, but soon they would. The night was silent, too silent, even the wind held its breath. The stars above blinked like cold watchers, and in the dark hills beyond the village, shadows moved like ghosts. They had waited for this moment. The moment when the villagers were weakest, the moment when hope was fresh but still soft. The bandits came with blades made of scrap and eyes full of hunger. They did not speak, they did not shout. They crept like wolves, crawling through the sand. They slipped past the broken fences and stepped into the village. Leo woke with a strange feeling in his chest. He grabbed a rusted pipe and stepped outside. He didn't see anyone at first, just the soft glow of his machine still working. But then he heard it, a crash, a scream, a shout. The bandits had struck. One knocked over the water tank, spilling clean drops onto the ground. Another grabbed the food basket near the garden and ran. Two others rushed toward Leo's machine with sharp tools raised. Leo shouted, but they didn't stop. They wanted to break the machine, to take it apart, to steal its heart. Leo ran forward, swinging the pipe. He hit one bandit in the arm, but the second knocked him to the ground. The world spun around him, and the last thing he saw was a boot coming down. When he woke, the machine was broken. Glass shattered, pipes bent, wires torn from the base. Water leaked into the sand, wasted. And lost, the villagers stood in silence. Broken inside, Saya knelt beside Leo, holding a cloth to his bloody head. Her small hands shook, her eyes full of tears. He blinked slowly, then pushed himself up. The machine was his child, and now it lay in pieces. The elder stood behind him, leaning on a cane. He looked around at the faces of his people. Fear, sadness, anger. Then he did something no one expected. He walked forward, picked up a broken piece of pipe, and placed it in Leo's lap. He said one word, soft and heavy, again. Leo stared at him, then at Saya, then at the villagers, and slowly, painfully, he nodded. He picked up another piece, then another. The villagers began to move too, gathering broken wires and dented metal. They didn't speak much, but their hands worked fast. The next day, the village was no longer quiet. It was filled with the sound of hammers, of sparks, of building. Leo wasn't fixing the old machine. He was building something new, something stronger, something that could defend. The children brought sharp rocks and nails. The adults dug small holes around the edge of the village. Leo used trash to build simple trap spike pits covered with cloth. He created cans that made loud noises when touched, even a blinking light that scared away night creatures. The elder nodded as he watched. This was no longer just about farming. This was about fighting back. But Leo didn't stop there. He made a smaller version of his old machine, compact, hidden, fast. It would make less water, but it could be moved. Hidden in the rocks if needed. Saya helped him test it, carrying it like a backpack when it worked. She laughed for the first time in days. The sound was soft, but it carried hope. One evening, Leo stood on a small hill outside the village. He looked toward the dark hills where the bandits had come from. He held a sharp stick in one hand and a broken mirror in the other. He wasn't scared anymore. He was ready. The village was no longer weak. The people were no longer silent. They had learned to fight not with swords, but with junk and courage. The boy from the stars had given them more than water. He had given them fire, and somewhere in the hills, the bandits were watching again, but this time, they would find more than food and soft faces. They would find traps, resistance, and a human boy standing in their way, because now, the village had chosen to protect its future, and Leo, with blood still on his face and tools in his hand, was no longer just a guest. He was one of them. The smoke rose slow and silent, not from fire, but from the heart of something new, something made from old junk and human hands. The village gathered around it, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. Leo stood beside his new creation, bruises still fresh on his skin, but his mind was sharper than ever. The bandits had broken his last machine, so this time he built something they couldn't touch. Something hotter, louder, and more alive. This one had metal wings to catch the sun, thick pipes that breathed steam, and a small engine made from scraps of forgotten tech. The villagers called it the fire tree, because it roared like one, and because heat flowed from it like breath from a beast. Leo didn't just want to protect them now. He wanted them to thrive. He tested it first by placing frozen soil beneath it. After 1 hour, the ground softened. After 2, the frost turned to rich black earth. By nightfall, seedlings had been placed gently into the warmth, and by morning, the first sprouts began to reach for the sky. The villagers stared, speechless. They had known warmth only from weak fires and cold blankets. Now they could feel it deep in their bones. This heat wasn't just for comfort. It was for growing, healing, surviving. Leo barely rested. He added spinning fans to spread heat, mirrors to reflect light, He showed Saya how to clean the pipes, how to listen for clogs. She learned fast. Quicker than anyone expected, her small hands moved like his, and soon they worked side by side. The elder brought seeds saved from long ago. Dry and brittle, Leo took them without fear. He planted them carefully, one by one, whispering things. Under his breath, not magic, just focus, just hope. Soon, the village smelled different again. No longer dust and dry air. Now it smelled like life, like soil, like steam and sun. But beyond the fields, danger was growing too. Carr, the angry villager who never trusted Leo, had vanished. He left one night without a word. Some believed he went looking for food. Others whispered something darker. Leo noticed missing tools, pieces of his scrap pile gone. He said nothing but started hiding his best parts in buried boxes. He didn't want to believe someone from the village would betray them, but the feeling in his chest grew heavier each day. Then one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, a horn sounded from the western ridge. Not a natural sound, not wind, not beast. It was sharp, made of metal and hate. The villagers froze, eyes wide, hands gripping whatever they could find. Leo grabbed a heavy wrench, not as a tool, but as a weapon. They had traps ready, walls patched, fire buckets near the machine. They weren't helpless this time. The horn sounded again, closer now. Shadows moved between the rocks. And then a voice rang out, cold and loud. "Give us the human," it said, "and we will leave your crops." Saya looked at Leo, her hands shaking. He stood still, breathing slow, eyes locked on the dark shapes in the distance. Then he stepped forward, past the elder, past the scared children. He raised both hands, holding a burning stick made from one of his machines, and he shouted something in his own language. The villagers didn't understand the words, but the fire in his voice told them what it meant. He was not giving up, and neither would they. The elder raised his staff. The children picked up rocks. Even the weakest among them stood beside Leo, because this wasn't just a human's fight. Now this was their home, their warmth, their chance. The bandits stood watching, not charging yet, waiting, measuring, planning. But something in their eyes had changed. This village wasn't afraid anymore, and at the center of it all was a boy. Not tall, not strong, not armed, but unshaken. A boy who built warmth from garbage and gave starving strangers a reason to stand. The sun sank lower, the cold crept in, but the fire tree burned brighter, and the battle hadn't even started yet. The sun vanished behind the rocks like it was hiding from what was coming. Darkness fell too fast, and silence followed behind it like a shadow with teeth. The bandits didn't charge right away. They waited just outside the village, quiet, watching. They thought fear would do the work for them, but the village didn't. Break. Leo stood near his machine, heat rising behind him. The fire tree glowed in the dark like a living thing. Steam hissed from its pipes, warning the night not to get too close. He tightened a belt on his tool vest, his fingers moving fast but calm. Around him, the villagers gathered in a circle, each holding something: rocks, sticks, metal. No one ran, no one begged. The elder stepped forward, tapping his cane into the ground. He said something in the old tongue of their people. Leo didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. It was a promise. If the bandits came, they wouldn't find an easy meal. They would find fire and fists and something they didn't expect. The horn blew one last time, louder than before. Then the bandits came down like a flood of claws and screams. Leo flipped a switch. The traps were ready. A line of wires sparked to life. Small lights blinked in the dark. One bandit stepped forward and triggered the first can trap. A loud bang exploded beside his head, and he fell screaming. More followed, but their feet got caught in hidden rope loops. They fell hard, face first into sand and stone. Then the villagers struck, not like soldiers, but like people who had nothing left to lose. They threw rocks, hit with sticks, and yelled with everything inside them. Leo ran between them, checking the machine, making sure it kept burning. The warmth it gave pushed back the night, pushed back the fear. But the bandits didn't stop. Their leader, tall and scarred, leapt over the traps and charged straight for the machine. He raised a heavy blade. Swinging at the glowing pipes, Leo screamed and threw himself between the metal and the man. The blade struck his arm. Blood sprayed across the ground. Leo fell, holding his arm, teeth clenched, but the fire tree didn't stop. Instead, it roared louder, steam bursting out the side. The bandit leader stepped back, confused. Then Saya appeared behind him with a sharp stick and drove it into his leg. He roared in pain and turned to strike her, but the elders slammed his cane across the back of his head. The bandit dropped unconscious. The rest of the invaders saw their leader fall, and fear returned to their eyes. They turned and fled, limping, bleeding, vanishing into the hills like rats. The village stood frozen for a moment, breathing heavy, hearts racing. Then one child cried, and another laughed, and the sound of joy spread like fire. They had done it. They had won. Leo sat in the dirt, his arm bleeding, his chest heaving. Saya knelt beside him, tearing cloth to stop the bleeding. "You're crazy," she whispered. But her smile was wide. The elder placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. "You didn't just build machines," he said. "You built us." The fire tree hissed softly. Still warm, still alive, the crops nearby swayed gently in the heat, untouched by flames, untouched by fear. They would eat. They would drink. They would rebuild. And now no one would ever call them weak again. The stars came out slowly, one by one. Leo looked up at them, eyes half closed. He wondered if Earth was looking back at him. If anyone there could see what one human boy did with nothing but trash and heart. But even if they couldn't, this village would remember, forever. The sky was clear again, but it wasn't the same sky they had known before. It felt bigger now, brighter, full of something new. Not fear, not silence, but life. The smoke from the battle had faded, and the wind carried the smell of growing things. Where once the village lay dying, now it stood alive, scarred, stronger, and reborn. Leo stood at the edge of the field, arm wrapped in cloth, face pale but proud. The fire tree still hissed beside him, its pipes rattling like it was breathing slow and deep. Crops moved gently under the warmth it gave. Strong and green, the children ran between the rows, laughing, their hands stained with soil instead of tears. The villagers no longer whispered when they passed Leo. Now they nodded, clapped him on the back, handed him small gifts, fruit, cloth, carved stones, simple things. But from the heart, he had given them a future, and now they gave him a home. Saya followed him everywhere, notebook in hand, copying his designs. She had learned fast, her fingers moving like his eyes sharp. She had ideas now too, things she wanted to build. To change, Leo didn't stop her, he encouraged her, because this place didn't just need him anymore. It needed builders, dreamers, creators. The elders sat near the center of the village, watching the young ones work. He had seen many seasons, many faces, many failures, but never something like this. Never a human falling from the sky with broken tech and a heart full of fire, and never a machine that turned trash into hope. One morning, Leo climbed the tallest rock just outside the village. He stared into the horizon, where the hills met. The sky, he held a small box made from scrap and old transmitter. Barely alive, he flipped a switch and static filled the air. He didn't know if anyone was listening. He didn't even know if the signal could reach beyond the stars. But he spoke anyway. "My name is Leo," he said, voice steady. "I crashed here with nothing but junk. I found a village dying," he continued, "and I used what I had to help them live. I don't know if Earth is listening. But even if no one hears this, I want it known these people are strong. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They are survivors, and so am I." He shut the device off, letting the silence return. He sat for a while, just breathing. Below him, the village moved like a heartbeat, slow, steady, alive. The machines hummed, the crops grew. The people laughed, and somewhere deep inside, Leo smiled. He had come from a place that threw away broken things. But here, even broken things mattered. Here, trash became treasure. and a lost boy became a legend. The stars above blinked quietly, as if they heard everything. And the wind carried Leo's story far across the sky, to be remembered, not as a tale of machines or war, but as the time one human boy saved an alien village, with nothing in his hands but the will to try.